39 days, 5 hours, and 52 minutes, beating the previous record of 62 days. The voyage was far from endured violent storms, one of which swept 27-year-old Lachlan overboard before he was pulled back on deck by his brother. They also faced cyclones that forced long detours, treacherous waves, and dwindling food supplies, prompting rationing in the final stretch. Rowing in shifts, the trio survived on freeze-dried meals, oats and coffee, while battling sleep deprivation. Yet moments of awe, such as star-filled skies and encounters with dolphins, helped sustain morale. Their carbon fiber boat, Rose Emily, was named in memory of their sister. Alongside their record, the brothers have raised more than £700,000 toward clean water projects in Madagascar, aiming for a £1 million target. Exhausted but elated, they were welcomed ashore by family and supporters in Cairns. Their first wish? Fresh food, a shower, and a proper night's sleep.
3 Scottish brothers rowed 9,000 miles across the Pacific, surviving storms and near tragedy, breaking a world record.
3 brothers from Edinburgh have shattered the world record for the fastest, unassisted, non-stop row across the Pacific Ocean. Jamie, Iwan, and Lachlan McLean completed their epic 9,000-mile journey from Peru to Cairns, Australia, in 139 days, 5 hours, and 52 minutes, beating the previous record of 162 days. The voyage was far from smooth. The brothers endured violent storms, which swept 27-year-old Lachlan overboard before he was pulled back on deck by his brother. They also faced cyclones that forced long detours, treacherous waves, and dwindling food supplies, prompting rationing in the final stretch. Rowing in shifts, the trio survived on freeze-dried meals, oats and coffee, while battling sleep deprivation. Yet moments of awe, such as star-filled skies and encounters with dolphins, helped sustain morale. Their carbon fiber boat, Rose Emily, was named in memory of their sister. Alongside their record, the brothers have raised more than £700,000 toward clean water projects in Madagascar, aiming for a £1 million target. Exhausted but elated, they were welcomed ashore by family and supporters in Cairns. Their first wish? Fresh food, a shower, and a proper night's sleep.
Australia faces outrage after $400 million Nauru deal to deport ex-detainees, condemned as discriminatory, dangerous and inhumane. The Albanese government is under fierce criticism after striking a $400 million agreement with Nauru to deport hundreds of former immigration detainees, known as the NZYQ cohort. The group, about 280 people whose visas were cancelled on character grounds, had previously faced indefinite detention in Australia until a 2023 High Court ruling deemed such detention unlawful without a prospect of deportation. Under the memorandum signed by Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke and Nauru's President David Ardiang, Australia will pay $400 million upfront, followed by $70 million annually to resettle the cohort in Nauru. Critics, including human rights lawyers, refugee advocates and the Greens, labelled the arrangement discriminatory, disgraceful and dangerous, warning it punishes people solely for being foreign-born. Some of the cohort have never been convicted of a crime, while others are elderly or sick. Advocates fear they may die on Nauru without adequate medical care. Greens Senator David Shoebridge accused the government of turning neighbours into 21st-century prison colonies. Burke defended the deal as essential for a functioning visa system, while critics vowed to challenge the deportations. Legal battles and public outrage are expected as deportations proceed.
Pro-Palestine activists disrupted Melbourne Symphony Orchestra's BBC Proms concert, accusing MSO of silencing artists critical of Israel.
A BBC Proms performance by the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra at London's Royal Albert Hall was dramatically interrupted on Friday night by pro-Palestine activists. The group Jewish Artists for Palestine disrupted the concert for more than 10 minutes, accusing the MSO of silencing performers who criticized Israel's actions in Gaza. Protesters shouted from the upper stalls, brandishing banners reading "Complicit in Genocide" and claiming the orchestra had blood on its hands. The controversy centers on acclaimed pianist Jason Gillam, who is suing the MSO after his 15 August Melbourne concert was cancelled. Gillam argues the cancellation was a retaliation for his remarks at an earlier performance, where he dedicated a piece to journalists killed in Gaza, calling their targeting a war crime. The MSO insists its actions were not about free speech, but admitted cancelling Gillam's concert was an error and has sought to reschedule it. Friday's protest was met with boos from some audience members. The BBC paused its live broadcast and later apologised for the disruption, stressing safety remained a top priority. Gillam's lawsuit against the MSO is due for trial in December.
Federal government announces $189 million safety package for childcare, including CCTV trial, phone ban, staff registry and training.
Childcare centres across Australia will begin trialling security cameras as part of a sweeping $189 million package aimed at improving safety in early learning. Education ministers from every state and territory signed off on the plan at a special meeting on Friday. The reforms followed the arrest of a Melbourne childcare worker earlier this year, accused of more than 70 child abuse offences against 8 alleged victims. Under the plan, CCTV will be installed in up to 300 centres, some on a voluntary basis, others required to take part. A national registry of early childhood educators will also be created, with a full rollout expected by February. The package sets aside $20 million for compulsory child safety training and introduces a nationwide ban on personal mobile phones in childcare facilities starting next month. Early Childhood Education Minister Jess Walsh said the measures are about restoring parents' trust. She said, "We are focused on keeping children safe and ensuring parents can hold providers to account." The opposition backed most of the changes, with Shadow Minister John O'Duniam calling for their urgent rollout.
Cybercrime Agency warns Australians of crypto ATM scams, with losses topping $3 million and victims mainly over 50.
Australians are being warned about a surge in cryptocurrency ATM scams, with reported losses exceeding $3 million so far this year. The Australian Cybersecurity Centre says it has received 150 reports in 2024, but warns the true figure is likely far higher. Victims are losing an average of $20,000 each, most commonly through investment scams, romance fraud, and extortion attempts. Authorities say more than 2/3 of known victims are women over 51, with many targeted because of limited understanding of cryptocurrency. Crypto ATMs, kiosks that allow users to buy or sell digital currency, have exploded in number, rising from just 23 in 2019 to more than 1,800 today. Austrac estimates $275 million moves through these machines annually, much of it scan-related. Fraudsters often pressure victims into sending money through the unregulated machines, making recovery almost impossible once funds are transferred. Austrac CEO Brendan Thomas has urged caution, warning Australians to stop and think twice before using a crypto ATM at someone else's request. The AFP believes many more cases go unreported, with some victims too embarrassed to come forward. Authorities have introduced new transaction limits to reduce criminal misuse, but warn scammers are adapting quickly.
Australia cuts wait for cancer survivors donating blood from 5 years to 1, excluding blood cancer patients.
Cancer survivors in Australia will now be able to donate blood and plasma just 1 year after finishing treatment, under new guidelines from the Australian Red Cross Lifeblood. The change slashes the previous 5-year waiting period and applies to most cancers, though survivors of blood cancers such as leukemia, lymphoma, and myeloma remain ineligible. Donors will also need written confirmation from their doctor that they are in remission. The new rule follows research showing it is safe to reduce the wait time, with studies confirming cancer cannot be transmitted through blood transfusions. The decision has also been approved by the Therapeutic Goods Administration. More than a third of blood donations in Australia go to people with cancer or blood diseases. Lifeblood Executive Director Kath Stone said many survivors, who once relied on transfusions themselves, are eager to give back. A University of NSW survey found 54% of Australians mistakenly believed having cancer made someone permanently ineligible to donate. Lifeblood says the change will help boost donor numbers at a time of increasing demand, particularly as older Australians, more likely to have had cancer, are often the most available to donate.
New NUPLAN results reveal 1 in 3 Australian students below literacy and numeracy standards, despite funding and reforms.
For the third year in a row, 1 in 3 Australian students has failed to meet national literacy and numeracy benchmarks, according to the latest National Assessment Programme Literacy and Numeracy NAPLAN results. This year's testing showed nearly 2/3 of students are meeting or exceeding expectations, while the remainder are considered developing or needing additional support. Almost 94% of eligible students participated in the tests, the highest rate since before the pandemic. The results reveal little overall improvement compared with previous years, despite a slight lift across year groups. Reading outcomes showed nearly 70% of students met or surpassed standards, while in mathematics the figure was slightly lower at 67%. Around 1 in 10 students was flagged as needing extra help. The data also highlights persistent gaps between students in regional and remote areas compared with those in urban schools. Education Minister Jason Clare said new public school funding agreements tied to reforms targeting literacy and numeracy aim to drive improvement. But the opposition argues the results prove the system is failing, calling for urgent measures to ensure Australian students get the strong educational foundation they deserve.
A former New South Wales police officer has been awarded $2.3 million in damages after a workplace car accident left her with catastrophic injuries and the amputation of her arm. Senior Constable Gillian Oliver, then 34, was injured in 2010 while transporting uprooted cannabis plants from an illegal plantation in Dingo Tops State Forest. Her vehicle, a heavily loaded Ford Ranger not fitted with off-road tires, lost control and plunged down a steep embankment. In a Sydney District Court ruling, Acting Judge Leonard Levy SC found NSW Police had breached its duty of care, causing Oliver's complete destruction of earning capacity. He cited both physical injuries and psychological trauma, including complex regional pain syndrome and major depressive disorder, which left Oliver unable to work. Oliver alleged the vehicle was dangerously overloaded and that police failed to provide training, equipment, or safety guidance. The court heard 7 similar rollovers had occurred in the force within 15 months before the crash. Rejecting claims of contributory negligence, Levy said responsibility lay with NSW Police. The payout includes $1.12 million for lost future earnings. Oliver now lives with permanent disability, her life blighted by pain and psychological suffering.
Famed Australian crocodile wrangler and television personality Matt Wright has been found guilty of obstructing justice after a 2022 helicopter crash that killed his friend and co-star. Wright, best known for Outback Wrangler and Netflix's Wild Croc Territory, faced 3 charges of perverting the course of justice. On Friday, a Darwin Supreme Court jury convicted him on 2 counts, lying to police about fuel levels and pressuring an injured pilot to falsify records while failing to reach a verdict on a 3rd. The crash claimed the life of Chris Willow Wilson, who was suspended from the aircraft harvesting crocodile eggs. Pilot Sebastian Robinson suffered serious injuries. Investigators later ruled the helicopter ran out of fuel mid-flight. Prosecutors argued Wright feared being blamed for the crash, accusing him of tampering with records and disconnecting hour meters to conceal excessive flight times. Wright, who denied wrongdoing, said outside court he was disappointed with the verdict but intends to appeal. The judge granted him bail, noting an appeal was highly likely. Once a global tourism ambassador, Wright's conviction marks a dramatic fall from grace for the Outback adventurer.
Some of Australia's top chief executives are earning salaries more than 50 times the average worker's pay, new data shows. The Australian Council of Superannuation Investors, ACSI, found that CEO pay at ASX-listed companies has grown at more than double the rate of national wage rises. The median realised pay for a top 150 CEO last year was $4.15 million, a modest increase from $3.96 million a decade ago. News Corp's US-based chief, Robert Thomson, topped the list, receiving $41.88 million. Luvisa jewellery chain's former CEO, Victor Herrero, was the highest-paid Australian-based executive, with $39.55 million before stepping down in May. Macquarie Group boss Shimara Wickramanayake was the highest-paid woman at $29.76 million. The report also found termination payments for the top 100 CEOs have dropped to their lowest levels in 15 years following post-GFC reforms. However, almost all surveyed executives received multi-million-dollar bonuses regardless of company performance. While Australian CEO pay is striking, it still trails the US, where top bosses make on average 348 times the pay of workers.
Canada and India appoint new high commissioners, signalling a reset in relations after months of expulsions and strained diplomacy.
Canada and India have appointed new high commissioners, signalling a cautious reset in relations nearly a year after both expelled each other's top diplomats. Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand announced Christopher Cooter as Canada's new envoy to New Delhi. Cooter, a 35-year veteran diplomat, previously served in Israel, South Africa and India. India has named Dinesh Patnaik, also with 35 years of experience and currently ambassador to Spain, as its next envoy to Ottawa. Relations collapsed in 2023 when Ottawa accused Indian agents of involvement in the killing of Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar near Vancouver, prompting reciprocal expulsions. The tensions followed years of friction over Sikh separatism and Canada's criticism of Indian policies. Prime Minister Mark Carney has sought to mend ties, inviting Narendra Modi to the G7 summit and initiating structured security talks to manage disputes more constructively. The rapprochement has divided opinion. Sikh groups warn Ottawa not to ignore human rights, while business leaders and Hindu organizations see closer relations as essential for trade and technology. Both governments say they expect a gradual restoration of trust, with trade talks and consular staffing among priorities in the months ahead.
Parts of Nunavut, including Baffin Island and Resolute, received rare August snowfall, first of its kind since 2001. Residents of northern Canada are witnessing a rare weather event, their first August snowfall in nearly a quarter century. Environment Canada confirmed that northern areas of Nunavut, including Baffin Island and Resolute, saw flakes fall on Thursday, with a few centimeters expected to accumulate before tapering off overnight into Friday morning. Meteorologist Steve Flisfeeder noted that the last time these regions experienced August snow was in 2001. While snowfall in early September is not unusual for the Arctic, warmer than average fall temperatures over the past decade have delayed the arrival of snow in recent years. This makes Thursday's early blanket particularly remarkable. This is the first August snowfall in these areas in almost 25 years, Flisfeeder said, adding that shifting climate patterns have generally extended summer conditions further into autumn. The early snow is a reminder of the extreme variability in Canada's northern climate, where residents are accustomed to sudden seasonal shifts. While some locals welcomed the sight of snow as a sign of the long winter ahead, others were surprised to see summer end so abruptly.
Federal deficit rises to $3.3 billion from April to June, despite higher revenues, as program expenses continue outpacing gains. The federal government reported a $3.3 billion deficit for the April to June period, widening slightly from the $2.9 billion shortfall recorded during the same stretch last year. According to the Finance Department, revenues increased by $3.5 billion, or 2.9%, thanks largely to higher corporate and personal income tax receipts and customs duties tied to Canada's counter-tariffs on American goods. However, these gains were outpaced by spending. Program expenses, excluding net actuarial losses, climbed $5 billion, or 4.6%. Public debt charges dipped modestly by $100 million, or 0.6%, as lower Treasury bill rates provided some relief, though this was partially offset by higher borrowing costs on bonds. One bright spot came from actuarial adjustments, with net actuarial losses falling $900 million, or 46.8%. Despite that, the government continues to face fiscal pressures as it balances revenue growth against rising expenditure demands. Economists note the figures underline the challenge of maintaining fiscal discipline amid competing economic priorities.
An Edmonton radio station is leaning on artificial intelligence to fill late-night airtime and sparking debate about the future of broadcasting. Sarah, an AI DJ, now hosts Sonic 102.9's Sunday 10 p.m. to midnight slot, joking on air about firmware updates and remixing traffic reports between alt-rock songs. Rogers Sports and Media says the program is additive, filling a previously DJ-free time slot with a human producer guiding scripts and content. Experts say Sarah is part of a broader trend. We can create voices out of thin air that seem to have personality, said Laurie Bexted, a Toronto Metropolitan University professor. She warns that while stations see cost savings, AI use raises concerns about displacing human talent. Other Canadian broadcasters are already experimenting. Chris Burns, owner of Burns Communications, launched AI hosts Cleo and Layla 2 years ago to cover overnight shifts in Ontario. They now banter about music, filter social media chatter, and even make the occasional slip-up, like mispronouncing Regina. Burns insists AI isn't replacing jobs, but filling roles few want. Still, he admits stations are fine-tuning personalities, from cheeky to sarcastic, to keep listeners engaged. Those who don't embrace AI will get replaced, he said.
Canadian luxury fashion retailer SSEN SSE says it will seek bankruptcy protection, citing mounting trade pressures and the sudden loss of a key US shipping exemption. In an email to staff, CEO Rami Atala said the Montreal-based company was surprised by President Trump's decision to suspend the de minimis rule, which allowed duty-free entry on US packages worth $800 or less. The move has created what Atala called an immediate liquidity crisis no short-term fix could solve. Founded in 2003, SSENS grew into one of Canada's most prominent global fashion platforms, employing 1,200 people and valued at $4 billion by Sequoia Capital in 2021. Despite those credentials, the company says it has been pushed into a corner by both lenders and tariff changes. SSENS stressed that it intends to keep paying salaries and continue business as usual while restructuring under the company's Creditors Arrangement Act. Retail analysts say the collapse highlights the vulnerability of even high-profile firms as luxury sales slow under inflation and US tariff policies hit margins. Industry experts warn more retailers could follow as e-commerce firms lose access to the long-standing duty-free loophole that moved 1.4 billion packages into the US last year. Canadian luxury fashion retailer SSEN says it will seek bankruptcy protection, citing mounting trade pressures and the sudden loss of a key US shipping exemption. In an email to staff, CEO Rami Atala said the Montreal-based company was surprised by President Trump's decision to suspend the de minimis rule, which allowed duty-free entry on US packages worth $800 or less. The move has created what Atala called an immediate liquidity crisis no short-term fix could solve. Founded in 2003, SSENS grew into one of Canada's most prominent global fashion platforms, employing 1,200 people and valued at $4 billion by Sequoia Capital in 2021. Despite those credentials, the company says it has been pushed into a corner by both lenders and tariff changes. SSENS stressed that it intends to keep paying salaries and continue business as usual while restructuring under the company's Creditors Arrangement Act. Retail analysts say the collapse highlights the vulnerability of even high-profile firms as luxury sales slow under inflation and US tariff policies hit margins. Industry experts warn more retailers could follow as e-commerce firms lose access to the long-standing duty-free loophole that moved 1.4 billion packages into the US last year.
Appeals court strikes down Trump tariffs, calling them unlawful. Ruling delayed until October as White House eyes Supreme Court. A U.S. appeals court has ruled that most of former President Donald Trump's tariffs were illegal, dealing a major blow to his trade policies and setting up a likely showdown in the Supreme Court. In a 7-4 decision, the Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit struck down Trump's reciprocal tariffs on dozens of countries, along with levies on China, Mexico, and Canada. Judges ruled that tariffs fall under Congress's constitutional authority and cannot be imposed under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which Trump used to justify his actions. The decision does not immediately take effect, with judges delaying enforcement until October 14 to give the administration time to appeal. Trump blasted the ruling on Truth Social, calling it partisan and warning that removing tariffs would destroy the U.S. economy. White House lawyers have argued that eliminating the tariffs could spark financial chaos. The ruling stems from lawsuits filed by small businesses and states who argued the tariffs drove up costs and violated the law. While tariffs on steel and aluminium remain in place under separate authority, Friday's ruling casts doubt on the future of Trump's wider trade strategy.
Kamala Harris loses extended security order from Biden as Trump revokes Secret Service protection ahead of book launch. Former Vice President Kamala Harris will lose her Secret Service protection this week after President Donald Trump revoked an extension granted by Joe Biden before leaving office. By law, former vice presidents are entitled to 6 months of security after leaving office. Harris's protection expired in July, but Biden quietly extended it for another year. Trump reversed that order in a memo dated August 28th, directing the Secret Service to discontinue any security-related procedures from September 1. The decision comes just weeks before Harris begins a multi-city book tour to promote her memoir 107 Days, recounting her brief 2024 presidential run. Her allies, including California Governor Gavin Newsom and Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, condemned the move as politically motivated and dangerous given Harris's history of receiving threats during and after her time in office. Secret Service coverage protects not only the individual, but also their homes, travel routes, and online threat monitoring. Replacing those protections privately could cost millions of dollars per year. White House officials insist the move follows a routine threat assessment that found no reason to extend Harris's security further. Trump has previously revoked security details for both political opponents and former allies.
Taylor Swift and NFL star Travis Kelce stunned the world this week by announcing their engagement, sparking fan frenzy and non-stop speculation about their upcoming wedding. The couple shared the news on Instagram with a dreamy 5-slide post, complete with flowers, heartfelt captions, and a dazzling ring that sent social media into overdrive. Event planners and fashion experts say the wedding is poised to be one of the most high-profile celebrations in years, potentially rivaling a royal wedding. Celebrity planner Katie Brundig told the BBC that Swift is likely to weave in her signature Easter eggs and keep details tightly guarded through confidentiality agreements and carefully chosen vendors. Fashion insiders expect Swift's gown to be more than couture, a love song in fabric. Designers from Oscar de la Renta to Vivienne Westwood and Gucci are already being speculated as possible collaborators. Some experts predict an intimate wedding at a private estate with deep personal meaning, possibly in Kansas City, where the couple first met and recently got engaged. With Swift's track record of secrecy and showmanship, fans can expect a wedding planned with precision, romance, and undeniable spectacle. New analysis finds just 4 federal politicians with student loans, fueling debate over youth representation and cost of living pressures. Only 4 of Australia's 226 federal MPs and senators have disclosed a HECS or HELP student debt, according to analysis of Parliament's Register of Interests by the Daily Oz. The register, which lists assets, investments and liabilities, shows Labour's Charlotte Walker, Gabrielle Ng and Matt Gregg, alongside the Greens' Steph Hodgins-May, are the only politicians with outstanding student loans. All 4 entered Parliament this year, with 21-year-old Walker making history as the youngest woman ever elected. The findings highlight what youth advocates say is a clear absence of younger voices in decision-making. HECS is tied heavily to the cost of living for young people, said Alice Jackson of Raise Our Voices Australia, describing a disconnect between politicians and voters. The average age of federal politicians is 52, while the average HELP debt stands at $27,600. Campaigners argue the small number of MPs with student loans underscores barriers preventing young Australians from entering politics. The government pointed to reforms, including changes to indexation and a one-off 20% discount, while opposition leader Suzanne Ley admitted more younger Australians in Parliament are needed. HECS, introduced in 1989, allows students to defer the cost of their university studies until they are earning above a certain income threshold. Critics argue the system has become increasingly burdensome, with indexation this year adding thousands of dollars to many balances amid high inflation.
From 2026, federal government plans new autism support scheme, raising questions over NDIS role for children. Autistic children may no longer rely on the National Disability Insurance Scheme, NDIS, as their main source of support, after Health Minister Mark Butler confirmed a new national program will be rolled out in 2026. Butler said the program is designed to provide earlier, fairer and more consistent help for children with developmental concerns, including autism, before families turn to the NDIS. He stressed the NDIS should not be the go-to place for families seeking support, with the scheme originally intended only for those with the most significant disabilities. The move follows sustained pressure on the NDIS, which has faced surging costs and growing enrollments of children with autism. Around half of all children on the NDIS have an autism diagnosis. Details of the new program are still being finalized, but it is expected to integrate health, education and community services, ensuring families have local access to therapies and early intervention. Advocates cautiously welcomed the announcement, but urged the government to guarantee funding and avoid leaving families worse off. Autism groups say support must remain accessible, affordable, and tailored to each child's needs.
Australia's drug use has reached record highs, with cocaine, methamphetamine, MDMA and heroin consumption all jumping sharply in the past year. The Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission, ACIC, released its latest wastewater analysis, covering August and October 2024. It found Australians consumed 22.2 tonnes of these four drugs during that period, the highest total since testing began in 2016. Cocaine use recorded the steepest rise, up 69% nationally, with the Northern Territory experiencing a staggering 222% increase. Methamphetamine consumption rose 21%, reaching its highest level since 2019, while MDMA use surged by 49%, fueled by rising domestic production. Heroin use also grew by 14%, with record high consumption in regional areas. The ACIC said the illicit drug trade has rebounded strongly after COVID-19 disruptions, with data suggesting further growth in coming years, except for heroin. While cannabis remains Australia's most widely used illicit drug, alcohol and nicotine continue to dominate overall consumption. Alcohol use rose nationwide in the past year, while nicotine use slightly declined. The ACIC estimated the combined street value of meth, cocaine, MDMA and heroin consumed in 2024 was $11.5 billion, among the highest drug markets in the world.
1 year on, half of surveyed employees have raised concerns or requests under new right to disconnect laws. It's been 1 year since Australia's right to disconnect law came into effect, giving employees the legal right to refuse unreasonable work contact outside paid hours. A new report from recruitment firm Robert Half found workers are taking advantage of the change. At around 250 companies surveyed, half of employees submitted formal concerns or requests about their rights in the past year.
The laws, which first applied to large businesses and have now expanded to small businesses, were introduced after a Senate inquiry found workers were being pushed to exhaustion by an always-on culture. Robert Half surveyed 500 hiring managers across finance, technology, and human resources. The findings suggest the legislation is prompting a cultural shift as both employers and staff reset expectations around after-hours contact. Robert Half director Nicole Gordon said employees are actively embracing the policy to set healthier boundaries, while employers are adapting workplace practices to align with the law. Advocates say the measure has improved work-life balance, but note its success will depend on enforcement and ongoing cultural change in Australian workplaces.
The NSW government will spend $1 million on a new program to combat Islamophobia amid rising hate linked to the war in Gaza. The funding will support police training, community education, and a hotline to report anti-Muslim incidents. It follows a 2024 government report that found both Islamophobia and anti-Semitism had grown in NSW since October 2023. Multicultural NSW has warned negative attitudes towards Muslims remain higher than for any other faith group. A separate report from the Scanlon Foundation found the number of Australians with negative views of Muslims rose from 27% in 2023 to 34% in 2024. The new program will be run by the Australian National Imams Council, ANIC. Its president, Shadi Al-Suleiman, said the spread of hate has left many Muslims anxious about practicing their faith in public, noting increases in microaggressions and harassment. Premier Chris Minns said Islamophobia is likely far higher than what is reported. The funding follows earlier commitments to Jewish community organizations, including $5 million for the Sydney Jewish Museum. The state opposition welcomed the program but criticized the government's response as too slow to address hate since the Gaza war began.
The world's first dedicated endometriosis research institute has been established in Sydney, with the goal of fast-tracking breakthroughs for the 1 million Australians living with the condition. The Ainsworth Endometriosis Research Institute, based at UNSW, will receive $50 million in funding over the next decade. The money comes from a philanthropic donation by the Ainsworth family, owners of one of the world's largest gambling machine companies. It is the largest ever private donation to women's health in Australia, and the biggest globally for endometriosis research. Endometriosis is a chronic condition where tissue similar to the uterus lining grows outside the uterus. It can cause severe pelvic pain, impact fertility, and often requires surgical diagnosis. Research from UNSW estimates 1 in 7 Australian women will experience endometriosis between the ages of 47 and 52. Professor Jason Abbott, a clinician and researcher, has been appointed AERI's director. He said the institute will go beyond surgery and current treatments to understand the disease at a deeper level. Abbott said the research will pave the way for generational change in how endometriosis is managed worldwide.
Australia's inflation rate has dropped to its lowest level in more than 4 years, strengthening expectations of an imminent interest rate cut. New figures from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, ABS, show annual inflation fell to 2.1% in the year to June, down from 2.4% in March. This is the lowest level since March 2021, marking a sharp decline from the 6.8% peak in December 2022. The ABS confirmed that inflation is now comfortably within the Reserve Bank of Australia's 2 to 3% target band. The closely watched trimmed mean measure, which strips out volatile items like petrol, fell to 2.7%, down from 2.9% in March. The RBA kept the cash rate unchanged at 3.85% earlier this month, saying it wanted more information before making its next move. With today's figures confirming a sustained slowdown in price growth, economists say a rate cut at the RBA's 12 August meeting is now a real possibility. Inflation has been trending lower for over a year, and this is the evidence the RBA has been waiting for, one economist noted.
The federal government has announced it will increase international student places by 25,000 next year, marking a reversal of its earlier plan to impose strict caps. The national planning level for 2026 has been set at 295,000 students, up from 270,000 originally proposed. Education Minister Jason Clare said the change was about sustainability, adding, "International education doesn't just make Australia money, it makes us friends." The government had previously pushed to cap international enrolments at 270,000, a move blocked in Parliament. The bill would have required universities to build more student accommodation in exchange for higher intakes. Under the new framework, public universities will be able to expand quotas only if they can prove they have enough housing for both domestic and international students, while prioritizing applicants from Southeast Asia. The coalition criticized the shift, calling on the government to explain how the new numbers would be sustainable, and warning regional universities could be disadvantaged. Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke insisted migration integrity remains a priority, saying the policy supports both universities and the national interest.
Qantas is cancelling more flights than any other Australian airline, according to new figures from the competition watchdog. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, ACCC, revealed Qantas cancelled 3.5% of its flights in June, almost double Virgin's 1.6% and well above the industry's long-term average of 2.2%. The watchdog said the Canberra-Sydney route was hardest hit, with cancellations spiking to nearly 12% that month. Airlines blamed poor weather, but the ACCC noted Qantas still recorded the worst reliability. At the same time, airfares have risen across all major airlines, despite a 12.3% fall in global jet fuel costs. Qantas sold the largest proportion of seats over the same period, cementing its dominant market share. The report found that while cancellations increased, punctuality improved overall, with most airlines beating the long-term on-time average of 80.7%. The Melbourne-Sydney corridor remained the busiest in the country, carrying more than 560,000 passengers in June. Although domestic passenger numbers are back to pre-COVID levels, available seating remains lower than in 2019, adding further pressure on travellers already facing higher fares and reduced reliability.
Canada's border agency to introduce AI system by 2027, screening all entrants and singling out higher-risk travellers for review. Canada's border agency is preparing to roll out a controversial artificial intelligence system designed to screen every individual entering the country and identify those deemed higher risk. The Canada Border Services Agency, CBSA, confirmed that the tool, expected to launch as early as 2027, will be used to support border officers in deciding whether to refer travelers and and their goods for further inspection. Officials argue the system will improve efficiency and strengthen national security amid growing cross-border travel volumes. According to CBSA, the AI model will analyze travel histories, declared goods, and other digital data to assess risk profiles, while the agency insists that no final decisions will be automated, with human officers retaining the power to act. Civil liberties groups have raised alarms over potential bias, privacy violations, and lack of transparency in how the system works. Critics warn that reliance on predictive algorithms could unfairly target marginalized groups or amplify systemic inequities in border enforcement. The government says it will implement strict oversight and safeguards before deployment. If introduced, Canada would join a growing list of countries experimenting with AI at their borders, sparking debate over the balance between security and rights.
Study reveals Canada's largest private landlord rapidly escalates eviction applications after buying buildings, sparking growing tenant concerns nationwide. A new study has found that Canada's largest private residential landlord often dramatically increases eviction applications immediately after acquiring new properties, raising concerns about housing security for tenants across the country. Researchers analyzed provincial tribunal data and discovered a consistent pattern. Within months of a building purchase, eviction filings surged, sometimes doubling or tripling. Tenant advocates argue this reflects a systemic strategy to displace long-term renters, increase turnover, and justify steep rent hikes in markets already strained by affordability crises. The company, which owns tens of thousands of units nationwide, has denied allegations of unfair practices. In a statement, it said eviction applications are filed in compliance with provincial laws and are often related to unpaid rent or lease violations, not targeted tenant removal. Still, housing experts warn that mass filings destabilize communities and disproportionately affect low- and middle-income families. They're calling on provincial governments to tighten rental regulations and strengthen protections against what some are calling financialized evictions. With Canada already facing record-high rents and low vacancy rates, the findings have reignited debate about corporate landlords' role in worsening the housing affordability crisis.
Canadian government acknowledges accidental removal of privacy protection from online streaming bill, raising concerns about user safeguards and oversight. The federal government has admitted to accidentally deleting a crucial privacy provision from its recently tabled online streaming bill, sparking widespread concern among privacy advocates and digital rights groups. The clause, which was intended to safeguard Canadians' personal data from misuse by streaming platforms, was removed during the drafting process, according to government officials. Heritage Ministry staff confirmed that the omission was unintentional and pledged to reintroduce the protection in forthcoming legislative amendments. Opposition critics seized on the blunder, accusing the government of negligence at a time when data privacy remains a pressing issue. Canadians deserve strong digital protections, not careless drafting errors, said one MP. Legal experts warn that even a temporary absence of such provisions could leave Canadians vulnerable to surveillance, tracking, and data exploitation by streaming giants operating in the country. Ministerial aides said the government remains committed to ensuring the bill strikes a balance between supporting Canadian content and upholding citizens' privacy rights. An amendment to restore the missing clause is expected in the next parliamentary session. For now, the controversy underscores the growing scrutiny over how Ottawa handles digital legislation in an era of rapid technological change.
Simon Fraser University, SFU, in British Columbia, is preparing to make history this fall by introducing what it calls a world first, an artificial intelligence teaching sidekick designed to assist students in real time. The live 3D interactive tool will accompany classroom lectures, respond to questions, and guide students through complex material, providing a dynamic new layer of learning support. Developed through collaboration between SFU researchers and industry partners, the AI sidekick is intended to complement, not replace, professors. It will be capable of adapting explanations, demonstrating concepts visually, and offering personalized feedback. Officials say the tool will make education more engaging, particularly in fields such as computer science, engineering, and data analytics.
Emphasizing the importance of human responsibility in guiding AI development and use.
And that means anyone in the class can feel way more comfortable about asking questions they don't know because she's always there ready.
University leaders emphasize that the technology represents a major step toward integrating AI responsibly into higher education. By using the tool in a structured academic environment, SFU hopes to explore the balance between human instruction and machine-assisted learning. The initiative is expected to attract international attention as educators worldwide experiment with AI-driven approaches. If successful, SFU's innovation could reshape the way universities approach teaching and learning in the digital age.
A major recall has been issued across North America for locking carabiners after safety regulators warned of a potentially deadly flaw. The US Consumer Product Safety Commission and Health Canada said the equipment, commonly used in climbing, construction, and rescue work, may fail to lock properly, creating a serious risk of falling. The recall covers thousands of units sold in both countries through outdoor retailers and online platforms. Officials say the defect could lead to serious injury or death from a fall, urging consumers to immediately stop using the products and contact the manufacturer for replacement or refund options. Carabiners are critical safety devices designed to hold heavy loads and secure ropes in life or death situations. Experts warn that aphasia during climbing, industrial rigging, or emergency rescue could prove catastrophic. So far, no fatalities have been reported, though at least several malfunction complaints triggered the recall. Regulators are stressing urgency, noting that even one defective unit poses unacceptable danger.
Prime Minister Mark Carney's recent surprise trip to Ukraine coincided with renewed scrutiny of Canada's nearly $22 billion commitment to the war-torn nation. A misstatement from the Prime Minister's office, PMO, added fuel to the debate, incorrectly suggesting Canada had made the highest per capita contribution among G7 countries. In reality, Canada has provided the most direct financial assistance per capita within the G7, amounting to $12.3 billion, largely in the form of loans. That equals about $296 per Canadian, compared with $229 per American. However, the United States far surpasses Canada in total aid, contributing more than $186 billion, or about $544 per person. Overall, Canada's assistance includes $6.5 billion in military funding, $372 million in humanitarian aid, and $700 million in development support. Roughly $12.1 billion of its financial support comes through loans, many with delayed repayment schedules. While some Canadians online argue the aid is too generous, others support it as essential to Ukraine's survival. Analysts also warn that Russian-linked propaganda has amplified misinformation, aiming to deepen public divisions about foreign assistance. Despite controversies, polling suggests a majority of Canadians remain cautiously supportive of continued aid efforts.
E3 nations trigger snapback move at UN, accusing Iran of clear violations, as Tehran vows retaliation and diplomacy.
The UK, France, and Germany have formally launched the process of restoring major United Nations sanctions on Iran, accusing Tehran of serious and deliberate breaches of its 2015 nuclear commitments. The so-called snapback mechanism built into the nuclear accord allows any participant to reimpose sanctions within 30 days if Iran is found in non-compliance. In a letter to the UN Security Council, the three European powers argued that Iran's enriched uranium stockpile has no civilian justification and constitutes a clear threat to international peace. They stressed that their move follows repeated offers of extended sanctions relief, which Tehran failed to meet with credible assurances. Iran's foreign ministry denounced the move as provocative and unnecessary, insisting that its nuclear program remains civilian and peaceful. Tehran warned that the snapback decision undermines cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency, but reiterated readiness for fair and balanced talks if approached with goodwill. The United States welcomed the E3's action, pledging to work toward full restoration of sanctions, while keeping open the door to direct dialogue. The Security Council now faces a crucial 30-day countdown to decide the future of sanctions relief.
From January, NHS will offer free chickenpox jab for all young children, aiming to prevent severe illness and complications. From January next year, all young children in England, Wales and Northern Ireland will be offered a free chickenpox vaccine on the NHS. The jab, previously only available privately at up to £200, will be given in 2 doses at 12 and 18 months, combined with the existing MMR vaccine against measles, mumps and rubella. A catch-up program will ensure slightly older children do not miss out. Ministers say the move will prevent serious but rare complications from chickenpox, including encephalitis, pneumonitis and stroke, while also reducing parental time off work. The Department of Health estimates the illness currently costs the UK £24 million annually in lost productivity. Experts, including the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation, have long recommended the vaccine, which is already routine in countries such as the US. Professor Adam Finn, a JCVI member, said the jab means chickenpox is going to be a thing of the past in the near future. Parents like Sarah, whose 2 daughters needed hospital care after severe chickenpox, welcomed the decision, calling the vaccine a lifesaver. Scotland is also expected to follow with its own rollout.
Lib Dem leader rejects King's invitation, accusing Trump of failing to end Gaza famine and hostage crisis. Liberal Democrat leader Sir Ed Davey has announced he will boycott Donald Trump's state banquet in London next month, citing the US president's failure to use his influence to stop the war in Gaza. The event, hosted by King Charles during Trump's September 17th to 19th visit, is considered one of the highest honors afforded to world leaders. Sir Ed said he and his wife Emily reached the decision after much prayer and reflection, adding that while turning down the King's invitation went against his instincts, it was the only way to send a message to both Trump and Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer. If Donald Trump tells Benjamin Netanyahu to stop this, it ends tomorrow, Sir Ed said, accusing the president of closing his eyes to famine, mass death, and the hostage crisis in Gaza. Trump has sent mixed signals on the conflict, calling for an end to real starvation but rejecting Palestinian statehood. Conservatives condemned Davies' move as disrespect to the king. Shadow Foreign Secretary Dame Priti Patel accused him of pathetic gesture politics, saying America remains the UK's closest ally and most important security partner.
A major UK study reveals outdoor play boosts children's social-emotional skills, yet many miss out after school.
1 in 3 children do not play outside after school, and 1 in 5 skip outdoor play on weekends, according to new research by the University of Exeter. The study, published in Wellbeing, Space and Society, analyzed data from 2,500 children aged 7 to 12 in the Born in Bradford program, which tracks families' health and well-being. Researchers found outdoor play strongly improves children's social and emotional skills, helping them better manage emotions, behavior, and relationships. But the study also revealed disparities. White British children were more likely to play outdoors after school, while South Asian children tended to play more on weekends. Children from less deprived communities appeared to benefit more from play, potentially reflecting access to safer, higher quality spaces. Lead researcher Dr. Mark Ferguson called the decline in outdoor play worrying, citing links to obesity, anxiety, and depression. He urged urban planners to create safer, play-friendly areas. Former Children's Commissioner Anne Longfield backed calls for a national play strategy, warning that too many children are sedentary, on phones, and alone, while their well-being deteriorates.
Britain blocks Israeli officials from its biggest defense expo, citing Gaza war escalation and push for ceasefire.
The UK has banned Israeli government officials from its flagship defense exhibition, the Defense and Security Equipment International DSEI show, scheduled for September in London. While Israeli defense firms including Elbit Systems, Rafael, and Israel Aerospace Industries can still attend, the British government said no official delegation would be invited due to Israel's ongoing military operations in Gaza. A UK government spokesperson said the Israeli government's decision to further escalate its military operation in Gaza is wrong. As a result, we can confirm that no Israeli government delegation will be invited to attend DSEI UK 2025. The move comes as Prime Minister Keir Starmer signals readiness to recognize a Palestinian state unless Israel takes steps to ease humanitarian suffering. London's stance mirrors actions taken at the Paris Air Show earlier this year, when France restricted Israeli exhibits, sparking diplomatic friction. Israel's defense ministry called the UK ban a regrettable act of discrimination and accused Britain of politicizing a professional industry platform. DSEI, hosted at London's XL Centre from 9 to 12 September, is one of the world's biggest military expos, backed by the UK government and armed forces. Researchers warn SUVs now dominate English cities, threatening safety, devouring public space, and prompting calls for Paris-style parking charges. The number of SUVs on English city streets has exploded, rising from just 3% of cars 2 decades ago to nearly 30% today. In London alone, the number of SUVs has jumped from 80,000 in 2002 to about 800,000 in 2023, according to analysis from Clean Cities. Campaigners say the rise of oversized vehicles is eating up valuable public space, pumping out toxic emissions, and endangering pedestrians and cyclists, particularly children. Research shows larger cars are deadlier in crashes, with high front ends that can obscure children in front of vehicles. Paris has already voted to triple SUV parking fees, leading to a 2/3 drop in large cars using surface parking. Advocates want UK cities, including London, Manchester, and Birmingham, to follow suit with weight-based parking charges. Oliver Lord, UK head of Clean Cities, said SUVs now consume as much space as an entire London borough, warning they pose a direct threat to safe, breathable, and accessible cities. While some councils, including Cardiff, Lambeth, and Bristol, are considering action, Campaigners argue stronger national measures are needed to curb the SUV takeover before cities become gridlocked and increasingly dangerous.
Google has issued a stark warning to its Gmail and Google Cloud users after revealing that a notorious hacking group, Shiny Hunters, is targeting account holders in the wake of a massive Salesforce data breach. The breach exposed business-related information, which Google says attackers are now exploiting through social engineering and phishing campaigns. Among the tactics, hackers are impersonating IT support staff, often via phone calls, to trick victims into handing over login credentials. Google confirmed that several intrusions have already been successful, with stolen passwords being used to escalate attacks. The Shiny Hunters Group, active since 2020, has previously been linked to high-profile breaches involving AT&T Wireless, Microsoft, Santander, and Ticketmaster. Now, Google's threat intelligence group warns the group could escalate further by launching a data leak site to pressure victims into paying ransoms. With 2.5 billion Gmail users worldwide, the threat is significant. Google has notified affected users directly and is urging all account holders to take immediate action, update passwords, enable two-factor authentication, and remain vigilant for suspicious login attempts. Security experts warn this could be the beginning of a new wave of aggressive data extortion campaigns.
A Scottish member of the Scottish Parliament, MSP, Colin Smith, has been locked out of Holyrood following explosive allegations that he placed a secret recording device in a parliamentary toilet. Colin Smith, South Scotland MSP and former Labour frontbencher, had his Holyrood pass deactivated after the allegations surfaced. Parliament's corporate body confirmed staff were informed of the ongoing criminal investigation in an internal email. The claims come on top of Smith's earlier suspension from Labour over separate charges of possessing indecent child images. He is due to appear at Dumfries Sheriff Court later this year. Police are also expected to bring fresh charges over the alleged camera incident. Holyrood officials said Smith will be barred from entering the Parliament building when MSPs return from recess next week. However, he could still contribute remotely under pandemic-era arrangements. Labour said it had acted swiftly, stressing Smith is now classed as an independent MSP. Holyrood's chief executive urged staff to use confidential support services, acknowledging the distress caused by the revelations. Smith, a former teacher and ex-General Secretary of Scottish Labour, has said he is cooperating with investigators and described the episode as a deeply stressful time.
3 men behind one of the UK's largest nitrous oxide smuggling operations have been jailed after importing 91 million canisters through bogus catering companies. Carl Messon, 58, and twin brothers Thomas and Benjamin Richardson, both 38, brought lorry loads of laughing gas into the country between 2016 and 2018. Leeds Crown Court heard the trio laundered more than £16.7 million through fake firms such as Worldwide Coffee Traders and Catering Pantry International. Although nitrous oxide has legitimate medical and catering uses, a 2016 ban made it illegal to supply or import the gas if intended for recreational use. In 2023, it was further classified as a Class C drug. The Yorkshire and Humber Regional Organised Crime Unit revealed the companies existed solely to disguise the illicit trade, with more than £12 million in cash fed into accounts. Investigators said the gang knowingly sold the substance for illegal use despite the ban. Messon was jailed for 3 years and 6 months, Thomas Richardson for 5 years and 8 months, and Benjamin Richardson for 6 years and 2 months. Officials said the convictions marked a major step in dismantling large-scale laughing gas supply chains across the UK.
Canary Wharf is said to make a dramatic splash with plans for a floating Olympic-sized Lido in the heart of London's financial district. The 6-lane pool, designed by Sea Lanes, the team behind Brighton's National Open Water Swimming Centre, would sit on Eden Dock, directly opposite Canary Wharf Tube Station. If approved, the venue will open in summer 2026, offering year-round swimming, saunas, fitness classes, restaurants and a community clubhouse. The 1.3-metre deep, naturally filtered pool will be fully lifeguarded and accessible to all. Renderings show the Lido floating beneath Canary Wharf's towering skyline, a striking addition to the transformed neighbourhood, once known only for banking. The proposals mark another milestone for Canary Wharf Group, which has sought to redefine the district as a cultural and lifestyle hub. Visitor numbers surged to 70 million in 2023, boosted by new restaurants and the Eden Dock waterfront oasis, now home to kayaking and community events. CEO Shobi Khan said the new Lido would build on the success of Eden Dock as a unique wellness destination. Sea Lanes director Ross Gilbert added the project aimed to bring people and nature closer together. ANZ faces backlash after mistaken emails told staff to return laptops, revealing job losses before official conversations began. Australian bank ANZ has issued an unreserved apology after more than 100 employees received automated emails instructing them to return their laptops before being formally told they were losing their jobs. The Financial Times reported that discussions about redundancies were originally scheduled for next week, but the email mishap exposed exit dates early, sparking distress across the workforce. Bloomberg later reported that ANZ accelerated its plans, informing all affected employees of their futures by Thursday. In a follow-up email, Bruce Rush, acting head of ANZ's retail division, wrote, "Unfortunately, these emails indicate an exit date for some of our colleagues before we've been able to share their outcome with them. I deeply regret the distress this situation may have caused." The bank offered counselling support to the staff involved. However, the financial sector union condemned the blunder as a disgusting way for workers to learn about job cuts through a botched email instead of a respectful conversation. The incident comes as new CEO Nuno Matos pushes for efficiency measures and a strategic reset. While ANZ's share price has risen 18% in 2025, employee morale remains under strain.
Australia Post halts some shipments to the US as new customs duties and clearance rules disrupt international parcel services. Australia Post has announced it will temporarily stop sending certain parcels to the United States, citing changes to US customs rules that have disrupted international shipping operations. The move follows the US government's decision to end the long-standing de minimis exemption, which allowed packages valued under $800 to enter duty-free. From now on, nearly all goods shipped into the country will attract import duties and taxes, depending on their origin. Australia Post confirmed that in response to the new rules, it has paused the acceptance of some packages until updated systems and handling procedures are in place. The decision affects both individual consumers and small businesses that rely on e-commerce deliveries to American customers. Like many postal operators globally, we are adapting to the new U.S. customs requirements, a spokesperson said. We are working with authorities and partners to minimize disruption, and services will resume as soon as possible. The suspension comes amid wider concerns among exporters and retailers that rising duties and stricter customs checks will slow trade flows, add costs for consumers, and disrupt small business operations reliant on overseas markets.
Rich Brown reveals he is bisexual, breaking AFL silence on LGBTQ players and challenging toxic locker room culture.
Former Australian rules footballer Mitch Brown has become the first openly gay or bisexual man in the 129-year history of the AFL. Brown, who played 94 games for the West Coast Eagles between 2007 and 2016, told the Daily Aus that hiding his sexuality took a heavy toll and was a major factor in his early retirement. It was never once an opportunity to speak openly or explore your feelings in a safe way, he said. The AFL had been the only major men's professional sport in the world without an openly gay or bisexual player, even post-retirement. Brown said he hoped his announcement would create safety, comfort and space for others. He also spoke candidly about the hypermasculine culture of the sport, recalling homophobic slurs on the field, and even a teammate once saying he'd rather be in a cage full of lions than shower next to a gay man. Experts say the revelation is historic, though real change depends on grassroots culture. Brown is being very open about the problems that need fixing, said Monash University researcher Eric Dennison. Brown, now 36, urged empathy and told closeted players, "I see you and you are not alone."
Canberra promises major environmental law reforms by 2026, aiming to strengthen protections while balancing development and climate goals. The Australian government has vowed to overhaul the country's national environmental laws before 2026 in what it describes as the most significant reform in decades. Environment Minister Tanya Plibersek confirmed the commitment, saying the current Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation, or EPBC Act, is outdated and no longer fit to deal with challenges such as climate change, biodiversity loss, and sustainable development. The pledge follows growing criticism from environmental groups who argue Australia's existing laws fail to provide adequate protection for threatened species and ecosystems. The government has promised to establish clearer national standards, stronger enforcement mechanisms, and streamlined approval processes that would give both developers and conservationists greater certainty. Industry groups have long complained that delays in assessments hinder investment, while environmental advocates say weak regulation has led to irreversible damage to natural habitats. The overhaul is expected to include the creation of an independent environmental protection agency to monitor compliance and enforce penalties. Plibersek stressed the reforms would balance economic growth with protecting Australia's unique natural heritage. Critics warn the government must avoid watering down protections in the name of efficiency, while business groups are urging swift passage of the new framework.
Doctors warn NSW hospitals at breaking point as 45,000 emergency cases swamp departments in just 5 days. New South Wales hospitals are experiencing unprecedented overcrowding, with senior doctors warning the crisis is among the worst they have ever seen. A surge in winter illnesses has left emergency departments struggling to cope, as more than 45,000 people presented to EDs across the state in the past 5 days. Health Minister Ryan Park said the figures highlight the extraordinary strain on the system, with staff working around the clock to keep services running. Our emergency departments are dealing with some of the highest presentation numbers we have ever seen, he said. Doctors say waiting rooms are packed with patients suffering from flu, COVID-19 and other seasonal illnesses, with ambulance delays compounding the problem. Some hospitals have reported patients waiting more than 24 hours for a bed. The Australian Medical Association warned the situation is unsustainable, urging the state government to expand capacity and provide immediate funding for additional staff. The crisis has reignited debate over chronic underinvestment in public health and the shortage of frontline workers. Mr. Park acknowledged the challenges, stressing that new measures are being fast-tracked to relieve pressure, but admitted there are no easy fixes.
A mental health crisis among Australia's youth has been laid bare, with new government data showing that a third of teenagers experienced suicidal thoughts or behaviour in the past year. The alarming figure underscores the urgency for stronger intervention and greater investment in mental health services nationwide. Experts say the findings highlight how social pressures, academic stress, cost of living strains, and the lingering impacts of the pandemic continue to weigh heavily on young Australians. Health professionals warn that without robust support systems in schools and communities, the crisis could worsen. The data has prompted calls from advocacy groups for expanded early intervention programs, improved access to counseling, and more resources dedicated to suicide prevention. They argue that young people are often unable to access timely professional help due to long waiting lists and service gaps, particularly in regional areas. The government has pledged to review existing support frameworks and expand helpline resources, but critics argue immediate and comprehensive reforms are needed to save lives. The figures have intensified debate over the adequacy of Australia's mental health response, with campaigners insisting that protecting young lives must become a top priority.
Melbourne University has been found to have breached privacy laws by tracking the movements of students during campus protests in 2024, according to the Victorian Information Commissioner. The watchdog revealed the university secretly collected and stored location data through Wi-Fi and surveillance technologies without obtaining proper consent. The protests, which centered on student activism over climate change and international policy issues, saw thousands gather across campus grounds. Investigators found the university's monitoring system recorded data that could identify and trace individual participants, a move deemed unlawful and disproportionate under state privacy legislation. Privacy advocates have condemned the breach, warning it sets a dangerous precedent for surveillance within academic institutions. Universities should be places of free expression, not covert monitoring, one campaigner said. Melbourne University acknowledged the findings, but defended the practice as a measure to ensure campus safety. However, the Commissioner stressed that safety concerns must still comply with legal privacy standards. The case has reignited debate over digital rights and the extent of institutional surveillance in Australia. Calls are mounting for stronger safeguards to protect students' freedoms and stricter penalties for future breaches.
Health Canada recalls Solstice jacuzzi heat pumps, warning models could overheat, spark fires and endanger homes this summer. Health Canada has issued a nationwide recall of thousands of swimming pool heat pumps over fears they could pose a fire hazard. The recall specifically targets several models of the Solstice/Jacuzzi 85K BTU heat pump model S85. Officials say the units, commonly used in residential swimming pools, may overheat during operation, creating a potential fire risk. Consumers are being urged to immediately stop using the affected pumps and contact the manufacturer or distributor for repair or replacement options. Authorities warn that continued use could endanger homes and property, especially during peak summer months when pumps are running for extended hours. So far, no injuries have been reported, but Health Canada confirmed it had received complaints of overheating. The agency stressed that even without visible signs of malfunction, owners should take the recall seriously. The manufacturer has said it is cooperating fully with regulators and working to provide remedies, including refunds or safe replacements. Consumers can check the Health Canada website for details on affected serial numbers and steps to arrange corrective action.
Canada recalls Halva after pistachio-linked salmonella outbreak hospitalizes 10. Officials urge consumers to avoid affected products immediately. Health Canada has announced a nationwide recall of Halva products amid a salmonella outbreak linked to contaminated pistachios. The recall affects several brands of Halva sold across multiple provinces, with officials warning that consumers should immediately check their pantries and avoid eating any affected products. According to health authorities, at least 10 people have been hospitalized in recent weeks after contracting salmonella from pistachio-based foods, including Halva. Salmonella infection can cause serious illness, particularly in young children, elderly people, and those with weakened immune systems. Symptoms include fever, abdominal cramps, nausea, diarrhea, and vomiting, which in severe cases can require hospitalization. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency, CFIA, is actively investigating the distribution chain to determine the full extent of the contamination. Officials have urged anyone who has purchased Halva or other pistachio-based products recently to check recall notices and dispose of them safely. Retailers have been instructed to pull the products from shelves immediately. Health Canada emphasized that foodborne illness outbreaks highlight the importance